1. Rummel had a background as an Air Force intelligence agent. What's more, in the years leading to his death, he was the publisher of the magazine Alien Digest. Some of the topics discussed in Alien Digest revolved around the idea that aliens were indeed on Earth, and had long-term plans to use humans as a food source. As we might imagine, many in the UFO community dismissed such notions. Then, in August 1993, Rummel died, an apparent clear-cut suicide in which he had shot himself in the mouth. It also appeared that the suicide note had been written by a left-handed person when Rummel was right-handed. According to some, Rummel had been silenced because he was getting too close to the truth. How true these claims might be is still discussed by some in UFO circles. 2. Another tragic death that some researchers have highlighted as potentially suspicious is that of MUFON investigator Ron Johnson. He officially suffered a sudden fatal stroke at a meeting of the Society for Scientific Exploration in Texas in June 1994. Johnson, who was 43 years old and recently medically cleared as fit and well, let out a sudden gasp at the meeting before falling forward in his chair. Even more disturbing, his face had turned purple, and blood poured from his nose. Although the cause of his death was ruled as natural, a stroke, some thought there was more to it. Several people at the meeting recalled him taking a drink from a soda can in the seconds before his sudden collapse and death. What's more, given his involvement in UFO investigations and his background of working with advanced technology with several corporations, some people wondered if something had been placed around the soda can, or even in the drink that might have caused such a reaction that would have been easily dismissed as a stroke. 3. Perhaps one of the most little-known suspicious deaths of a person connected to UFOs is that of radio broadcaster John Murphy. We should note that Murphy was not a UFO investigator but a radio journalist. He happened to be in the right place at the right time during the alleged Kecksburg UFO crash in December 1965. So much so that he obtained audio tapes of witnesses and several photographs of the crash site. This alleged evidence was ultimately confiscated by high-ranking government officials, an incident that was witnessed by at least one other radio station employee. In short, it appeared Murphy was very credible in his claims. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time several years later in California in February 1969 when he was killed in a tragic hit-and-run accident. 4. For the 1990s and much of the early 2000s, Tony Dodd was one of the UK's leading UFO researchers and investigators. That he had a long career as a police detective behind him only made him that much more credible regarding the incidents he investigated, and investigated some of the most intriguing cases of UFO sightings and apparent alien abductions in the UK from the late 1980s to the early 2000s. Dodd passed away in 2009 from a brain tumor. Given that he had, according to his own writings, received warnings to avoid certain countries due to possible attempts on his life, as well as direct warnings from a mysterious agent in the United States, many wondered if the tumor had somehow been triggered by agents of a dark agency with advanced technology. 5. UFO investigator and MUFON member Anne Livingstone died in 1994 of a fast-acting and aggressive form of ovarian cancer. However, many of her fellow MUFON members, fellow investigators, and close friends began to wonder if a UFO sighting and subsequent encounters with the Men in Black. One evening, her apartment near O'Hare Airport in Chicago was suddenly lit up by a silver-white flash. Then, only a few hours later, several faceless entities dressed very similar to the Men in Black arrived at her apartment. Moments later, she blacked out, unaware of what happened next. As outlandish as it might sound to many, some researchers have suggested that her illness was a result of this strange meeting. 6. The death of researcher and author Jim Keith could very well be a case of several bizarre and unlikely coincidences. Keith had been involved in examining the work of Danny Casolaro, an investigative journalist whose death was also suspicious. He essentially claimed Casolaro's statements of an octopus of individuals controlling events from behind the scenes was accurate. Further were the claims of drug testing by dark government contacts on residents in areas such as Dulce in New Mexico, against their will, under the bizarre guise of alien abduction to divert attention away from their very real and illegal activities. Whatever the truth, Keith would fall from a stage at a festival in 2004, breaking his tibia and requiring surgery. It was a surgery that he would never wake up from. His official cause of death was a blood clot in his lung that caused him to pass away on the operating table. Incidentally, around the same time as Keith's death, one platform he wrote for, Nitro News, completely disappeared from the internet for several weeks. 7. An early name in UFO research is Morris K. Jessop, author of the 1955 book, The Case for the UFO. Unknown to Jessop, the release of the book would spark a series of events that would result in his tragic death. Jessop began receiving correspondence from a mysterious gentleman named Carl Allen, who eventually claimed to have been involved in the legendary Philadelphia experiment. This correspondence caught the attention of the U.S. Navy, who questioned Jessop at length about it and his UFO research in general. However, following the meeting, Jessop began receiving strange phone calls. This caused him to be much more guarded in his research. Then, on April 19, he made arrangements with Dr. J. Manson Valentine to meet him the following day regarding a breakthrough he had made. Jessop never arrived at that meeting. He was discovered the following day, dead in his car, a hosepipe coming out of the window leading to the exhaust. Some believe the suicide was actually murder. Perhaps one of the reasons was the soaked towels wrapped around the hosepipe. Not only did they not belong to Jessop, but there was also no water source anywhere nearby for him to have soaked them in. 8. In the early 1990s, Schneider began a series of public lectures where he claimed to have worked for the United States government at various underground facilities. It was during this work that he stumbled into a full-on battle between underground aliens and a military unit below Dulce. He would even claim to have suffered an injury during the fight from a futuristic alien weapon, scars he displayed publicly several times. As you can imagine, many scoffed at Schneider's claims, even some from inside the UFO community. Others, however, seemingly bought into what he was saying entirely. And his talks still circulate around today. He would also state during these talks that, how long I will be able to do this, was not known. Officially, Schneider took his own life on January 17, 1996. His body was discovered with a piece of wireflex wrapped several times around the neck, and apparent hanging. Many people, including some members of his family, dismissed the suicide claims.